Okay, for the temperature sensor T, we have 4 parts. We have the stainless steel T, 2 barbs, and then the RTD temperature sensor. Make sure that each part has Teflon tape wrapped around it before we thread it in. Thread all of the barbs in. Make sure everything is tightened down, not finger tight, but with a wrench. For doing the Teflon tape, make sure you're wrapping in the direction that you screw the threads in. And then for these metal threads, do 2 to 3 wraps of the tape around. Then rip it off, and then thread it in, again get the wrench. And tighten it. And that's it. Now for the tubing, all of the tubing lengths are listed in the user manual. So for pump to reservoir, reservoir to pump, we're going to cut out a length of about 9 inches. Now for the peristaltic pump tubing, we are using the 5/16 inner diameter Farmed tubing. The length is in the user manual. And then to connect it to the rest of the circuit, we're using the 5/16 to 1/4 inch inner diameter barb. That goes on both ends. Make sure to secure all tubing connections with a zip tie, just like this. To install the tubing in the pump, you turn this all the way to the left, squeeze on either side of the pump, take the lid out, place the tubing inside evenly on both sides, slide the cap right back on, and then close this to lock it in place. Now to install the reservoir, we're going to put our 9-inch length of tubing on the bottom of the reservoir. And then to install the reservoir, we put it on this spike right here, and then ensuring that this slot lines up with this point in the reservoir so it won't spin around. Slot it on, and then we connect this tubing to the pump just like this. So now that the reservoir is in, we can move on to the oxygenator. All right, now we're going to connect the oxygenator. So we can take it off, place our in tubing on the bottom barb of the oxygenator. Now we can slide the oxygenator back onto its mount with the back lined up with the back of the oxygenator, and it will click into place. And then we can take this tubing and reach it over to the other end, the outlet of the pump, and then make sure this tube clamp is closed so that blood doesn't leak out. All right, now that we have the oxygenator installed, we're going to connect it to the sampling port and the temperature sensor. So first, let's take around a 19-inch length of tubing, connect it to the oxygenator outlet barb. Then we can go ahead and cut the tubing and use our 1/2" inner diameter barb 3-way connector that has a lure lock on it. And then fit that onto the tubing. Next, we'll add the second run to the other end of that and screw in the sampling valve to that lure lock port right there. Next, we need to connect it to our temperature sensor. Now we have our temperature sensor assembly. We can snap that in to its 3D printed housing and then snap the tubing over the barb. And then after that's installed, we take our black RTD cable, let it snap in to the divot on the temperature sensor, and then screw it down. Now to connect the temperature sensor to the Deltran pressure sensor, we first screw in the lure portion of the pressure sensor to the exact same connector we used for the sampling port. Now we have our Deltran sensor assembled to the T, and then we'll take around a 3-inch run of tubing to go over the barb and then onto the stainless steel temperature sensor barb like this, and then both sensors can snap in to their mounting points. Now for mounting the flow sensor, we press it into its housing here. We then open it up and we can fit the tubing inside. First, we need to click it onto the pressure sensor T, and then it squeezes into the flow sensor. We can close the flow sensor up, and then that tubing will go into the kidney through the chamber. So now we take our Deltran cable and we fit it into the sensor right here. And that's the rest of the pressure sensor done. And now plugging in the flow sensor, we just click the cable in, making sure that the flow sensor is in reverse direction to the flow. It's been corrected in software, so if the flow readings are negative, it's in the wrong direction. All right, lastly, we need to connect the chamber drain port to the reservoir. So we squeeze this in, and then the reservoir comes with a locking adapter for the 3/8" inner diameter tubing. So we screw that on, and then that lets us press in the .3/8" tubing, and then that lets the reservoir drain back in. Now we can add the tube clamp if pressure needs to be changed through the clamp. So that just slides onto the tubing, and then based on screwing this, it will constrict the flow. So now we're gonna set up the heating system. Right now we have the RTD plugged in. It's the same cable as the other RTD on top. And then we have both the inlet on the top in green and the outlet connected to the oxygenator. Now we're gonna take 1/2 liter, 500 ml of distilled or DI water, and we're gonna pour it into the reservoir of the heating system. Right now the pump is off. The AC plug on the power box is unplugged. And then we're gonna pour it in. Make sure you're lifting the outlet tube up so we don't spill any water. But we're gonna pour in about that half a liter. Let it run through the system. And then we're going to put the cap on. And then make sure that this tubing isn't kinked right here. And then to avoid that, we can put a little zip tie here to hold the tubing up. And then in the back here, we're gonna take our barrel jack for the 12 volt and then plug that into the barrel jack on the back. And this will start the pump. Now that the pump is running, we can let it run for a little bit and make sure there's no leaks. We can now plug in the power cable for the heater, like this. And then the last thing we're gonna do is plug in the AC cable on the back of the electronics box. So here we have the AC plug for the electronics box. When this is plugged in, do not open the electronics box or touch anything near the wires on the heating system. So now we're gonna plug this in, and then we're gonna make sure we're not touching any other parts of the heating system, and we're not going into the electronics box. Now on the GUI right here, we can see our PID temperature, and then we can see this would be the water temperature, and then we can see our safety relay here, and then our SSR. We're gonna open the safety relay. We're gonna hear it click, and then click auto. And then set 30, whatever set point you would like, and the heating system is going to start warming up. As we can see, the SSR is turning on and off, and then inside the box we see that red light turning on and off.
This is how to turn on the GUI. On the desktop, you'll find a folder called Hot Kidney Control System. Click in, and you will find two launcher folders. One turns on the Mac dashboard and one turns on the Windows dashboard, and we'll use the Windows one today. You'll see there's 3 batch files. To launch the dashboard with the NMP, use the second one called Launch Dashboard. Once you click in, the dashboard should automatically pull up. To turn the dashboard off, first close the website, then press any key to continue. Control C this terminal window, and then click on the stop dashboard. Click any key again and it should be stopped. Once the dashboard is open, we recommend the first thing to do is go to settings, set the map flow window. So this is the time interval for the averaging of pressure and flow. The CSV recording interval for this 0 would record every single sample, and so we recommend keeping it above 1, because if you have it at 0, it will only record 45 minutes of data. Then here we have the selection for which temperature sensor to use for the PID for the heating controls. Then here we have the max duty cycle and integral band setup for the heater control, which you should not change. And then here on the left we have the readout warning limits. So here you can set pressure, temperature, flow limits. So where if the value is within 10% of the edge cases, the readouts will show up as yellow, and if they exceed the edge cases, they will show up as red. Then here in the main control tab, we have the data window selection. So this is to set what time interval the charts show. Then we have the pump control. To control the pump first, you need to type in an RPM value, set, and then click run. Once when you want to stop, you should select stop. Here, under that, you can select what direction the pump runs. This will only change once you stop and run it again. Same with the time and volume settings. Then here in the data viewing windows, we have the pressure, temperature, flow, and renal vascular resistance. Then we have the heating control tab, which is covered in another video. On the bottom you have a stopwatch, which you can use however you want. And then on the right you have the recording window, where you can put your own name, RPM test. Then you can start recording, stop recording, and then export to CSV. So you can export to CSV after stopping the recording, and you can export the CSV while it's recording. And then you have clear all to clear data from the CSV and the data windows. Here on top, where you can see recording off, when the CSV starts recording, you will see a timer. Then once you stop, you can stop and then export. When you export, it goes to the downloads folder and you can move it wherever you want, wherever you need it.